It was 6:00 the morning when I heard the knocking at the door. They weren't normal knocks like the ones the mail carrier gives or some distracted neighbor. They were hard, insistent, desperate knocks. The kind of knocking that wakes you up with your heart racing with that feeling that something bad is happening. I sat up in bed, confused, trying to figure out what was going on. It was still dark outside. The light of dawn was just beginning to filter through my bedroom curtains. Who could be knocking at my door at this hour? I thought about ignoring it, about lying back down and pretending I hadn't heard anything. But the knocking continued, getting more urgent, more desperate. I got up, put on the robe I always leave hanging next to the bed, and walked barefoot across the cold hallway of my house. Every step I took toward the door increased my nervousness. Something in the air felt strange, heavy, as if the morning itself knew this day wouldn't be like the others. I reached the entrance and looked through the peephole. It was Frank, my longtime neighbor, the man who lived 3 houses down, the same one who had helped me fix the yard when Arthur died 5 years ago. But this wasn't the calm, kind Frank I knew. His face was pale, distraught. His eyes were wide open, filled with something I immediately recognized. Fear. Genuine, deep fear. The kind that can't be faked. I opened the door slowly, barely enough to see him better. He took a step forward, practically tripping over his own words. "Helen, listen to me carefully. Don't leave the house today. Please trust me. Don't go out for any reason." His voice trembled. Frank never trembled. He was a 70-year-old man, an ex-military service member, someone who had seen things in his life I couldn't even imagine. And there he was in front of me, begging me to listen to him with an urgency that chilled my blood. "What? Frank, what are you talking about? What's going on?" He looked behind him, out at the empty street, as if expecting to see something or someone. Then he looked back at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to tell me everything. But he didn't. He just shook his head with an expression of anguish I had never seen on him before. "I can't explain now. Just stay home. Lock the doors. Don't open for anyone. Not even if they look like officers. Do you understand me? No one." A shiver ran down my spine. Officers, what was he talking about? Why couldn't he just tell me what was happening? "Frank, you're scaring me. Tell me, what is it? You'll understand this afternoon. I promise you'll understand. But right now, I need you to trust me. Please. Helen, please." And before I could answer, before I could demand a real explanation, he was already backing away, moving down the driveway. I watched him disappear into the dim morning light, walking fast, constantly looking side to side as if he were being chased. I closed the door with trembling hands and stood there in the silence of my own house, trying to process what had just happened. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. What the heck was that? I walked to the kitchen, needing a glass of water, needing to think clearly. I turned on the light and the sudden glare made me blink. Everything in my house looked normal. The table where I always eat breakfast, the mugs hanging in their place, the wall clock Arthur gave me on our 30th anniversary. Everything was the same, but nothing felt the same. I poured myself water with hands that were still shaking and sat down on one of the chairs. Why was Frank so scared? And why couldn't he tell me the reason? He and I had a good relationship. After Arthur died, Frank was one of the few people who genuinely cared about me. He helped me with heavy things around the house, invited me for coffee occasionally. He was always there when I needed him. But this was different. This wasn't a courtesy visit or a favor between neighbors. This was a warning, an urgent, desperate, terrifying warning. I looked at the clock. 16 inches the morning. Outside, the sky was slowly beginning to brighten, painting itself in shades of orange and pink. Any other day, I would be getting ready to go out. Tuesdays, I always went to the Oakwood Community Center to help with the children's reading program. It was something I had started doing after I was widowed. A way to fill the hours, to feel useful, not to be alone in this house full of memories. But today, Frank had told me not to leave, to stay locked inside. Why? What could be so dangerous out there that he felt the need to come to my house at 0 inches the morning to warn me? I tried to rationalize. Maybe he had heard something on the news. Maybe there was a neighborhood security alert. But then why didn't he tell me directly? Why all the mystery? And why did he tell me not to open the door even if they looked like officers? That part bothered me more than anything else. Officers of what? Police? Government? What kind of situation requires you to distrust the authorities? I got up and walked to the living room window. I slid back just a corner of the curtain and looked outside. The street was empty and quiet. The trees swayed gently in the morning breeze. Everything looked perfectly normal. Too normal, perhaps. Then I saw it. A car parked at the end of the street right on the corner. A grey sedan with tinted windows. It didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. I was sure of that. I knew my neighbors' cars. This one was new, and something about the way it was parked. Slightly angled, as if the driver wanted a clear view of the whole street. Put me on edge. Had that car been there before? I didn't remember. But I didn't usually pay attention to those things either, until today. I let the curtain drop and moved away from the window. feeling a growing paranoia. This was ridiculous. I was a 8-year-old widow, retired with a simple, predictable life. Who would want to harm me? Why would someone be watching my house? But Frank's look was still imprinted on my mind. The fear in his eyes was real. And Frank was not a man who was easily scared. I went back to the kitchen, and this time I made myself a cup of coffee. I needed caffeine. I needed to wake up completely and think this through clearly. While the water boiled, I took out my phone. Maybe I should call someone. But who? My children lived far away. Claire, in another state, working on her law career. Daniel abroad, pursuing his photographer dreams. We had talked last Sunday. Our routine weekly call. Everything normal. Everything fine. I couldn't call them now and tell them I was scared because my neighbor told me not to leave the house. Alarms would go off. They would want me to move in with one of them. To leave this house. This life. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The coffee was ready, and I sat back down at the table, staring at the steaming mug. What was I supposed to do? Sit here all day waiting for what to happen? What exactly? Frank said. I would understand by the afternoon. What was going to happen in the afternoon? I took a sip of coffee, barely burning my tongue. The pain brought me back to reality. I needed to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Frank had had a nightmare or was going through something personal and didn't want to worry me with the details. Maybe. The phone rang. I jumped so much I almost spilled the coffee. My heart started racing again. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated for a moment. My finger suspended over the answer button. What if it was part of what Frank had warned me about, but it could also be a normal call? A survey. A salesperson. I answered. Hello? Silence. I could hear someone on the other end. Soft breathing. But no one spoke. Hello. Who is this? More silence. And then click. They hung up. I lowered the phone slowly, looking at it as if it were a strange, dangerous object. A silent call. At 6:30 inches the morning. Right after Frank's warning. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. I got up again, this time with more urgency, and checked all the doors in the house. The front door locked. The back door that led to the yard locked. The windows all closed. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. But I also felt a little safer. I went back to the living room and sat on the sofa, clutching a cushion to my chest. Outside, the day kept getting brighter. I was inside, locked in, scared, not understanding what was happening. And the worst part of all was the wait. Frank said I would understand by the afternoon. That meant hours. Hours of being here alone with my imagination, creating the most terrible scenarios. I looked at the clock again. 6:45. The day had just begun, and it already felt like it had lasted an eternity. The hours passed with unbearable slowness. I stayed sitting on the sofa, checking the clock every 5 minutes, feeling like time was crawling as if the day itself was conspiring against my sanity. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the television, but I couldn't focus on anything. The news talked about the weather, politics, sports. Everything was normal. Nothing that explained why my neighbor had appeared terrified at my door. I turned off the television and silence filled the house again. That silence I knew so well that had been my constant companion for the last 5 years. Since Arthur died, silence had become something familiar, almost comforting. But today was different. Today the silence didn't comfort me. It oppressed me. I got up and walked around the house, checking the windows again, making sure everything was closed. I felt ridiculous doing this, like a paranoid old lady seeing dangers where there were none. But I couldn't help it. Every noise startled me. The wind against the windows, the creaking of the house's old wood, the distant hum of a car passing by on the street. I reached the room that had been Arthur's and mine for 35 years of marriage. Now it was just mine. The bed perfectly made, the curtains half closed, his things still on the nightstand. I never had the courage to remove them. His watch, his reading glasses, the book he never finished. Sometimes I would come in here just to feel him close, to remember what it was like to have someone in this house, what it was like not to be alone. The children had suggested 1,000 times that I sell the house, that I move to something smaller, more manageable. It's too big for you alone. Mom, Claire would say every time we talked. And she was right. This 3-bedroom house with its big yard and long hallways was too much for a woman my age. But it was my home. It was the place where I had built my life, where I had raised my children, where I had loved and had lost. I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. I went back to the living room and peered out the window again. The grey car was still there. It hadn't moved in 2 hours. This couldn't be a coincidence anymore. Someone was watching the street, or they were watching me. I felt a shiver. Why would someone want to watch me? I wasn't anyone important. I was just a retired widow living off her pension and the savings Arthur had left. We had a modest life. We never had a lot of money. Arthur worked his whole life as an accountant at a medium-sized firm. He did his job, came home. We ate dinner together. We watched television. A simple, predictable life without secrets or mysteries. Or so I thought. I moved away from the window and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat something even though I wasn't hungry. I made a sandwich that I could barely taste. The food felt like a knot in my throat. My stomach was closed up with anxiety. The phone rang again. This time I almost dropped it. I grabbed it with trembling hands and looked at the screen. Unknown number again. Different from the one in the morning, but just as anonymous. I hesitated. Should I answer? What if it was the same person as before? I answered. Hello. Silence again. But this time I could hear something else. Background noise, as if the caller was in a public place. Distant voices. The sound of traffic. Who is it? Why are you calling me? Nothing. Just that soft, almost imperceptible breathing. And then click. They hung up again. I put the phone down on the table and sat, feeling like tears were threatening to fall. I wasn't a woman who cried easily. I had learned to be strong when Arthur died. I had to be. But this was overwhelming me. This feeling of not knowing what was happening, of being trapped in something I didn't understand. Why were they doing this to me? What did they want from me? I looked at the clock. 10:00 inches the morning. 4 more hours until 2:00 inches the afternoon. 4 eternal hours. I got up and started pacing around the house again, unable to stay still. I passed through the hallway full of family photos. Claire and Daniel when they were little, smiling in their school uniforms. Our wedding. Me in my white dress. And Arthur so young and handsome. Vacations at the beach. Birthdays. Graduations. A whole life captured in frames hung on the wall. I stopped in front of a photo of Arthur, taken a few months before he died. He was in the garden with his gardening tools, smiling at the camera. He looked happy, healthy. No one would have imagined that 3 months later he would suffer a massive heart attack in his sleep. The doctor said it was fast, that he didn't suffer. That was supposed to comfort me. But it never really did. I missed him so much. I missed his voice, his laugh, the way he held me at night before we slept. I missed having someone to share my days with. Someone who made me feel less alone in this world. What's happening? Arthur, I whispered to the photograph. Why am I so scared? Obviously, there was no answer. Just the silence of the house and the ticking of the wall clock. I kept walking and reached the study Arthur used to work from home when he brought papers from the office. I had never touched this room much after his death. The children helped me pack some things, but most of it was still there. His files, his folders, his desk organized in the meticulous way he always kept it. I walked in and sat in his chair. The old leather creaked under my weight. I ran my fingers over the desk surface, picking up some of the dust that had settled over the years. Arthur spent hours here checking numbers, doing calculations, working on things I never really understood. He was the one for numbers. I was the homemaker, the mother, the one who kept everything running while he brought in the money. That's how our marriage worked, and it had never bothered me. We were a team, each with our role. But now I wondered if I had really known my husband. Were there secrets in his life I didn't know about? Things he hid from me to protect me? I shook my head. I was being ridiculous. Arthur was a good, honest, transparent man. There were no secrets. There were no mysteries. It was just fear talking, making me doubt everything. If this story has touched you, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with others. It helps me grow and reach more people. I got up from the chair and was about to leave the study when I heard something that chilled my blood. Footsteps outside in the yard. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. The steps were slow, deliberate. Someone was walking along the side of my house. I approached the study window carefully, moving as silently as possible. The curtains were partially closed. I barely peeked one eye through the edge and looked outside. There was a man in my yard, tall, dressed in dark clothing, walking slowly down the side path. It wasn't anyone I knew. His hands were in his pockets, and he was looking at the house, studying it as if he were looking for something. Panic flooded me. I backed away from the window, tripping over my own feet. Who was he? What was he doing on my property? Should I call the police? But Frank had told me not to open the door, even for officers. Did that mean I shouldn't trust the police either? I peered out again, more cautiously this time. The man was still there, now looking toward the windows. For a terrible second, I thought he had seen me. But he kept walking, circling the house, disappearing toward the backyard. I ran to the kitchen where I had a view of the back patio. I arrived just in time to see him try the handle of the back door. My door. He was trying to get in. I stifled a scream. The door was locked. Thank God. But he kept trying, pushing softly, testing if it would yield. I backed away from the window, my hands over my mouth, trying to control my breathing. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. After what seemed like an eternity, the footsteps moved away. I looked again. The man was gone, disappearing the same way he had arrived. I sank into a kitchen chair, shaking from head to toe. Someone had tried to break into my house. Someone was watching me, following me, testing my doors. Frank was right. Something terrible was happening. I looked at the clock with tear-filled eyes. 11, 30 inches the morning. There was still 2.5 hours left. How much more could I endure this? I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and wrote a message to Frank. Someone was in my yard. They tried to open my door. I'm scared. What's happening? I sent the message and waited, staring at the screen with desperation. Minutes passed. 1:25. No answer. Please. Frank. Answer me. Nothing. The silence in my house was now deafening. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound was a threat. I felt like a cornered animal waiting for the moment the predator would finally attack. And the worst thing was that I didn't even know who the predator was or why it had chosen me. The phone rang at 12 noon. Exactly at 12, as if the caller had been waiting for that precise moment. This time it wasn't an unknown number. The screen simply said, "Police Department." My heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, I slid my finger to answer. Hello. Mrs. Helen Jones. It was a male voice. Official. Serious. Yes. This is me. Mrs. Jones. This is Detective William Brooks from the police department. I need you to stay calm and listen to what I'm going to tell you. The tone of his voice made my stomach churn. Something bad had happened. Something very bad. What? What's going on? Ma'am? Where are you right now? The question threw me off. Why did he need to know where I was? I'm at home. Why? What's happening? There was a pause on the other end. I could hear voices in the background. Movement, as if the detective were in the middle of something important. Mrs. Jones, I need you to confirm something for me. Were you at the Oakwood Community Center this morning? I froze. The Oakwood Community Center. That was exactly where I went every Tuesday at 9, 0 inches the morning. Where I was supposed to be today. Where I would have been if Frank hadn't warned me to stay home. No, I replied, feeling my voice tremble. No. I've been here at home all morning. Why? Another pause. This time longer. When the detective spoke again, his tone was different. More cautious. More concerned. Ma'am, this morning at 9:20, there was an incident at the community center. A serious incident. And we have multiple testimonies from people who claim to have seen you there. I felt as if the ground was opening up beneath my feet. What? No. That's impossible. I wasn't there. I'm telling you. I was at home all morning. I understand, ma'am, but I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. There are witnesses who identified you. There are even recordings from the center's security cameras. That can't be. It has to be a mistake. I didn't leave my house. Mrs. Jones, is there anyone who can corroborate that you were at home this morning? Any family? Any neighbors? I thought of Frank, but he had specifically warned me not to open the door to anyone. Did that include the police? Besides, he hadn't answered my message. I had no way to prove where I had been. I was alone. But I swear I didn't leave. What incident? What happened? The detective sighed on the other end of the line. I would prefer not to give details over the phone. Ma'am, I need you to come to the station so we can clarify this. Go to the station. Am I being accused of something? I'm not saying that. Ma'am, we just need you to come give your statement and help us understand what happened. This is very serious. My mind was a chaos of contradictory thoughts. Frank had told me not to leave, not to open the door even for officers. But now the police were asking me to go to the station. What was I supposed to do? I need time to process this. I can come later. Mrs. Jones, I really need you to come now. If you weren't at the center, as you say, then we have a much bigger problem. Someone is using your identity. The words fell on me like stones. Someone is using my identity. What did that mean? Was someone impersonating me? Why? I don't understand any of this. How is it possible that someone... That's why we need you to come in. Ma'am, to resolve this, can I send a patrol car to pick you up if you prefer? No. The word came out louder than I intended. No. Let me think. I need a moment. Ma'am, if you don't come voluntarily, I will have to. I hung up. I know it was stupid. I know I probably made things worse. But panic overwhelmed me. I dropped the phone on the sofa and held my head in my hands. What was happening? How was it possible that there were witnesses who saw me in a place I wasn't? And what incident had occurred? The detective said it was serious. How serious? The phone rang again immediately. The police department again. I didn't answer. It kept ringing once, twice, 3 times until it finally stopped. I got up and started pacing back and forth across the living room, trying to think, to make sense of all this. Someone had impersonated me. Someone who knew exactly where I went on Tuesday mornings. Someone who knew my routine. And something had happened. Something serious enough for the police to call me. Something they were now blaming me for. I ran to the window and looked outside. The grey car was gone. In its place, there was now a police patrol car parked at the end of the street. 2 officers were inside, looking toward my house. Fear turned into pure terror. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to faint. This was real. Everything was real. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. Something terrible was happening, and I was at the center of it all. I grabbed my phone again and wrote to Frank, this time with more desperation. The police called me. They say they saw me at the community center. What happened? Something serious. There's a patrol car outside my house. Frank, please. I need you to help me. I need you to explain what's happening. I sent the message and waited, staring at the screen with tears streaming down my cheeks. This time, the answer came almost immediately. Don't open the door, no matter what they say. I'm coming over. Give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I had to hold out 20 minutes more. I looked out the window again. The officers were still in the patrol car, but now one of them was talking on the radio, probably reporting that I was home, that I hadn't left, that I wasn't answering their calls. How long would it be before they decided to come get me? Did they have an arrest warrant? Could they enter my house without my permission? I knew nothing about laws. I had never had problems with the police in my life. I had been an exemplary citizen for 68 years, and now I was hiding in my own home, terrified of the very officers who were supposed to protect me. The phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but different from the previous ones. I hesitated to answer, but something in me needed to know more. Hello, Mrs. Jones. It was a female voice this time. Young. Nervous. Who is this? My name is Olivia. I work at the Oakwood Community Center. Ma'am, I need to talk to you. It's about what happened this morning. My breathing quickened. What happened? No one wants to tell me exactly what happened. Well, it's complicated. The woman who was here this morning, the one we all thought was you, she did something terrible. She stole money from the donation box, more than $3,000 that we had raised for the scholarship program. And not only that, she also took files from the administrative office, personal documents from several volunteers and program participants. I slid onto the sofa, feeling my legs fail me. But it wasn't me. I didn't do that. Why would they do this to me? I know, Olivia said, and her voice sounded genuinely confused. That's why I'm calling you. Because something doesn't add up. That woman, she looked a lot like you, Mrs. Jones. A whole lot. But when I saw her up close, something was wrong. Her eyes, the way she walked, how she spoke. It was you, but it wasn't you. Do you understand what I mean? No, I don't understand anything. How is it possible that someone looks so much like me? And why? To steal $3,000? That's what doesn't make sense. Olivia continued. $3,000 is money. Yes, but someone who took the trouble to impersonate you, to know your routine, your schedule. Why risk it for that amount? And the files she took were specific files, as if she knew exactly what she was looking for. What kind of files? I can't give details. Ma'am, but they were sensitive documents, personal information. The director is furious and the police are investigating. But I felt like I had to call you because when I saw that woman this morning, something inside me told me something was wrong. And now that I know it wasn't really you, everything makes more sense. Did you tell this to the police? Yes, but they are focused on finding you. They have your fingerprints on the box, witnesses who identified you. For them, it's an open and shut case. My fingerprints. How can they have my fingerprints if I wasn't there? There was an uncomfortable silence on the other side. I don't know, ma'am, but they have them. Detective Brooks told me. I hung up the phone, feeling like I was going to throw up. My fingerprints. How was that possible? How could someone have my fingerprints? Then I remembered. 2 months ago, I had gone to the bank to renew some documents. They asked for my digital fingerprints for the new debit card. A standard procedure, they said. Something for extra security. Was it possible that someone had accessed that information? That they had used it? I looked at the clock. 10 minutes had passed since Frank's message. 10 more minutes. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Footsteps on the porch. Knocking on the door. But they weren't desperate knocks like Frank's this morning. They were firm knocks. Authoritative. Mrs. Jones. Police department. We need you to open the door. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the living room, looking at the door as if it were a living creature about to devour me. The knocking continued, becoming more insistent. Mrs. Jones, we know you're in there. Please open the door. We just want to talk to you. It was Detective William Brooks's voice. The same voice I had heard on the phone minutes earlier. But now, hearing it on the other side of my door, so close, terrified me in a way I couldn't explain. Frank had told me not to open the door, not to trust anyone, not even officers. But how could I not open for the police? Wouldn't it make everything worse if I refused? Ma'am, if you don't open voluntarily, we will have to consider other options. We don't want to come to that. Other options? What did that mean? Breaking down the door? A search warrant? My mind tried to process all the possibilities while my feet remained glued to the floor. I approached the door slowly, making no sound, and looked through the peephole. They were two men dressed in dark suits. One of them, the one who had been speaking, was about 50 years old. Grey hair. A serious expression. The other was younger, standing slightly behind, looking around the porch as if expecting someone else to appear. We just want to clarify the situation at the community center, the detective continued. If you really weren't there as you claim, then we need your help to find the person who was. It's as simple as that. He sounded reasonable, logical, exactly what a real detective would say. But something in his tone, in the way he looked at me through the peephole, told me this wasn't that simple. I need to talk to my lawyer first, I finally said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. The two men exchanged glances. Ma'am, you are not being accused of anything yet. We just need your statement. You don't need a lawyer for a conversation. Yet. That word resonated in my mind. I wasn't being accused yet, but I would be soon if I didn't cooperate. Anyway, I prefer to wait. The detective sighed, and for a moment I thought they would leave. But then he took something out of his pocket. A photograph. You can at least see this. Mrs. Jones. He held it up to the peephole. It was a security camera image, grainy and in black and white, but clear. It showed a woman entering the community center, a woman who looked exactly like me. My heart stopped. It was like looking in a mirror. The same height, the same haircut, the same way of walking. She even wore clothes similar to what I would have worn. Khaki pants and a light blouse with a sweater over it. That's you. Mrs. Jones. I couldn't answer. I was too shocked. Who was that woman? How was it possible that she looked so much like me? She has your face, your build, your way of dressing. The center staff immediately recognized her. They even called her by name. And she responded, "You're telling me you have an identical twin that no one knows about?" "I don't have siblings," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if they had heard me. The detective put the photograph away, and his expression hardened. Mrs. Jones, this is not going to go away. The longer you go without cooperating, the worse it will look for you. I suggest you reconsider your decision. I already told you I wasn't there. I don't know who that woman is, but it's not me. Then help us prove it. Come with us. Give your statement. Allow us to take your fingerprints for comparison. You already have my fingerprints, I interrupted. They told me they found them at the scene. Another exchange of glances between the two men. The younger one approached and whispered something in the detective's ear. Brooks nodded slowly. It's true. We have them. Which makes your insistence that you weren't there even harder to believe. Do you understand the situation you're putting yourself in? Yes. I understood. I understood perfectly that someone had planned this very carefully. Someone who knew where I went, how I dressed,